Glad everybody showed up. I don't know how many we have out there, but we have a couple of you out there waiting to go. And I hope as we get going along the way tonight that we kind of pick up some others. I turn down my phone so we don't get that echo sound. Holy cow. I got all kinds of stuff going on here. Hold on. I got everything turned on. I got all kinds of stuff going on. There we go. Now I'm not echoing. All right. Just to go into a little bit, what we're going to talk about tonight is assimilation of your uh, group growth, and then kind of like the ABCs of how to grow your group. So, in order for us to kind of understand what assimilation really is all about, I got a couple of notes here. We'll go over it, and then we'll just kind of open it up for discussion. We have Reed, and we have Tony, Anthony, I'm sorry, and we have Dan and Cheryl up on the panel tonight. Cheryl's going to be fielding the questions from the side chat over there. So if you guys have any questions or comments, make sure you're leaving them out there for us to pick up. So a simulation is actually just referring to part of an adaptation process that it's initially proposed already. It's like through assimilation, we take in new information or experiences and incorporating them into our existing lives. And we do that, we start doing it actually at a young age. And we kind of learn to do it. So the process is somewhat subjective because we tend to modify our experiences and fit it to a new situation or a pre existing situation. So as people encounter new things and interpret experiences, they make both small and large experiences and adjustments to their existing ideas about the world around them and how they formulate everything. So assimilation is about the easiest method because it doesn't require a great deal of adjustment. It just means that we need to adjust the thinking of an old system and improve it. So that's what assimilation is, assimilating or assimilation is all about. So what we're talking about is just making changes to our group and how to grow the group growth through assimilation. So that's where I'm going to start it at, and I'm going to hand it off to Dan to begin with, and you can start
Oh,
there.
just go another direction. I got to think on this one just a
You
little
got
bit.
something
So,
else? How about Reed then?
Me? Okay. I can
I
yak for a
tried to
minute.
take it off you the first thing.
No, it's all right. So when you think about bringing new people into the group, there's several dynamics and issues you have to consider. One is like if you're a size of 10 people and you try to bring on 20 new people, you're going to have a real hard time of that. Because the thing is when you're bringing the new people in, so like that, they may have different ideas, different plans, different stuff like that. And you really need to have good defined patterns set up and things like that to bring them in and have them join you and not cause a lot of problems, basically. And one of the other things that's really important in my mind is that the further you are away from standard American government, standard American ways of doing things in America, where the USA I'm talking about, the harder it is to bring new people into an area and group. Because if they're really far different, like you set up like your own fiefdom and you've got these kings and lords for some reason, and it's the medieval ages in your area, new people are going to have a real hard time adapting to that situation. But if you're kind of mirroring really much standard American systems, how they function, all that, it'd be a lot easier to get people used to that sort of thing. The other thing is being able to what I saw call enfranchisement. So when you bring people in and they feel like they're actually getting listened to, people are actually understanding what their needs and concerns are, other things like that, you have a much easier time getting them into the fold and feeling like they're part of this new group and they're working with you. If you have a feeling of people being outsiders or differences in lines getting drawn, it really leads to some ugly political things that are really not useful to SHTF and surviving and looking for your next meal, water, and everything else. Drama is something we don't need. So there's my quick thoughts on it. Anyone commenting so far?
Oh yeah. Wes was saying I had it up there on the page.
Oh, I'll go look.
Yeah, it was personality thing or a body condition thing.
Yeah. Also, you need to be physically fit. You know, if you're going to be assimilating a group, you need to actually try to be physically fit or even mentally tough is part of what I'm thinking about. Maybe able to contribute a valuable skill set to your group. You're always going to need somebody in different skill sets in order to make the group work. To make the group work. I'll just stop right there. How about you, Anthony?
Well, this in this situation, are we talking about like if there's a SHGF scenario, grid down scenario? Is that what we're kind of hitting at?
And we're trying to get it. What would happen? You're going to have to form or assimilate a group if you don't already have one. And even though you have a group and you're in a SHGF situation, you may have to assimilate changes in it in order to bring more people in. And you're going to have to know what you're looking for to get those people to come in.
No problem. I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page here. The main things that I would be, I mean, this is a really good question by far, but the main things that I'm trying to hit on first are what can you bring to the group, and are you a liability? What are your liabilities? Like, you don't want someone with a whole bunch of baggage. Like, I hate to say it, but like a medical condition that's going to slow everybody down, say something that could be contagious or something like that. But you also want to bring someone on the group that's going to, be able to bring a skill that you don't have, like that proper balance. Like, I work on cars, so I know I can work on, things that are mechanical in any kind of group. But there are also doctors, nurses, plethora of things, security. I mean, if you're really good at security, that kind of thing, then you're going to obviously offer a skill set. But if there's already like 5 people with security and you're the security guy, it's kind of, can you do something else? That's the kind of thing that I really want to address here. If you are young enough and healthy enough to where you can do something else, like help in the fields, that kind of thing, by all means, you're more willing to get a pass, in my opinion. But you have to come in with any kind of group. You have to come in with like an open mind. You can't just try to come in and change things. And if someone does come in and try to change things, you need to have a set defined, like, I wouldn't say like laws, but I mean laws. Like, you can't. The first thing that's going to stop people from paying attention to you is if you give one group one set of rules and then another group another set of rules. So you can't lose your, the followers. You can't have a mutiny on your hands because you're giving people different standards. You kind of got to set a nice set of standards at the beginning and kind of uphold that regardless. That's the main thing I'm trying to get at here. So obviously identify good skill sets, put people in the right places. Don't, like Reed was saying, don't assimilate too many people at one time, and just make sure everybody has some sort of value to bring to the group.
All right. Well, I've got a couple things to add. Unless Cheryl, go ahead.
I just wanted to say real quick, KFAB said, oh gosh, it went by so fast. She said something about, let me see if I can find it. Sorry.
She said that nude people have no place to store ammo.
No,
like someone else replied, not true. Everybody has a prison purse, right? So.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
She said, I have a medical issue, but holding that against me after the world ends would be a mistake on your part. And then she had LOL. But you have to understand, I don't think he meant that, that's not exactly what he meant. It's a medical issue. I'm taking it, Anthony, that's a medical issue that would cause a problem for the group.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm talking about like TB.
I think it's more of a medical issue that. Oh, go ahead.
I'm saying I'm talking about like TB. If you have like TB or some sort of communicable disease, or you're paraplegic that needs dialysis, that kind of thing, where you got to have someone constantly watching you all the time. I mean, I'm not trying to say that people aren't going to have a chance. But I mean, you really got to look at, like, if this is a survival scenario, like some
Sure.
hardcore things, you have, is it worth it?
Right.
Well, it's all in, what type of illness it is. If it's a chronic, like a severely chronic disease that is going to deplete your resources quickly and rapidly, obviously you're going to have to do something differently to be able to support that member of your group. Because
Exactly.
if you have one member of the group that's leeching off 40, 50, 60% of your stored resources, that's going to be a liability to your group versus an asset to your group. So those are the things that you're going to have to consider. Now, obviously, if you have a disease that you can control and you're not going to be a scourge on the resource development of the group, then you're going to be an addition and not a liability there. I think something else strong to consider is the type of government that you're going to have for your pod, your tribe, your mag, your group, whatever you want to call it or title it, because we all like to think that we're going to be able to go on and wake up the next day and keep going with the democratic republic that we've been instilled with as people. But once it hits the fan, you're not going to be able to maintain that level of government on that small of a group. So you're really going to I was watching some Pastor Joe videos today, and he said it best. He thinks it's going to be like monarchies and hierarchies that come back, and feudalism is going to come back during SHTF, and good kings will have good subjects and good followers, and bad kings will have revolt and rebellion.
I've always
with that,
agreed with
you have
Pastor Joe on that immensely. I've
Yeah,
often thought it invites pure mutiny, and that you are looking to get a bullet in your head quicker than anything.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Josh out in the side chat said, so what if you become a liability, you get a bullet in your head or in your group?
Yeah, I also have long thought that when you start thinking about who is a resource hog because of a medical condition and all that, you're just a couple steps away from a World War II villain we fought in the past.
To simulate your group, basically your group is going to start out being basically your family.
Sure.
Your family.
Obviously, you can't you can't just cast people out of the group once they're in the group, but you need to be able to make hard decisions.
Yeah, this is about assimilation here. This isn't about who's already personally in your group. I'm talking about when it comes down to disabilities and that kind of thing, obviously have a skill set. If you're going to be, if you do have a disability or some sort of something, make it worth their time if you're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, you would have to sell yourself to the group to make sure you were accepted. You would have to have something to offer.
Right.
And that's my opinion anyway. You wouldn't want somebody that you're just going to sit there and take up all your energy just to exist. You want to have somebody in there that's going to have something to add to the group.
Right. And, let me back up here just a second here. Hold on. They're basically saying the same thing, that you have to prove yourself as a liability. But if you've proven, let me get back up here to Wes S's. He said, if you're going to cause a group to fail trying to keep you alive, then why you want them to die with you? And then Josh said, so once you become a liability, Will already read that one. And I think that's what they're trying to say, is that if you are not proving that you can be a valuable part of the group, if you're causing a liability, that's when the decision has to be made. It's not saying that people can't be disabled and not be a part of the group. They're not saying that. They can't say that they are sick and they can't be a part of it. They're trying to.
Isn't that part of assimilating? Is they have to prove to you before you ever take them in?
Right.
Well, I think the operation on that thinking might have a flaw in it. The reason why I say that is I think a lot of people that are going to come by and be interested in your groups are actually going to be other groups. I think the chances of finding, or just families coming together and stuff. One-off people, I think, are going to be rare because strength in numbers sort of thing. The lone wolf is going to have a hard time reaching you.
Yeah.
So if you're evaluating a family or other people coming to you and one person has a medical problem, and you're saying all of you but them I don't think that's going to work very well. I think you're going to suffer some major problems. So
Is it
you're
worth
going
this?
to have to look at the whole of the people coming towards you and say, hey, can they help? I mean, like, even if you had someone who's old, sick, or disabled and all that, maybe they could watch the kids and keep an eye on all the kids for the day while other people are out working the farms and stuff. I mean,
Right.
labor is going to be a resource we're all short on, and finding fits for people is going to be important. And if, like, a person has the family coming to you has a nurse and a doctor, and they've got 2 young kids and their old grandmother who's, really ill, but, she could watch the kids in the day. I don't think that's really a bad thing. You might really need a doctor.
That's what I was talking about too. Just making changes.
It'd be worth it.
That is part of the assimilating process, is trying to make everything fit, not pushing them out necessarily. Maybe it just came off all wrong, but basically everybody needs to have a skill. And, if they're coming into the group, they need to prove that they're going to be able to fit in. It's like Reed said, even if you're old or even disabled where you can't walk very good or you can't do something, there's other things you can do. Like he said, you could babysit, or maybe you could wash the clothes or put them up to dry, or there's other small jobs that are going to be needed to be done, not just the physical things.
There's always going to need. We're always going to need somebody that can string the beans up and dry out the beans. You're always going to need someone that can process all the food and stuff that comes out of the garden. You're always going to need people to watch the kids and maintain the house, cleanliness around the homestead site right there. So we're not necessarily saying that we're going to cast away the sick and the weak and the poor and the downtrodden there, because we're all going to be a little sick. We're all going to be a little downtrodden. We're all going to be a little poor. With that said, it's going to behoove you to have a positive mental attitude at all times so that you can assimilate properly. If you show up with your scourge or your disease, and you're going to be a pestilence on the group, you're going to complain about it, you're going to steal away from the resources and stuff, you're not going to add to the group, obviously you're going to get cast away quick. You show up to the group with your disease and you work your ass off and you fight through it and you push that, you push forward as hard as you push forward. The group is going to see that you are putting forth the effort needed to survive, and they're going to help you climb the path right there. It's all going to be about your attitude and the way that you approach the group. You're going to have to keep positive. Unfortunately, it's going to be, hard times, but you're going to have to, keep it up, so that, especially if you're coming into a group with a deficit to begin with. So you're going to have, unfortunately, you're going to have to work that much harder to be able to maintain your worth and stuff like that, because I'm not going to support someone that's not going to try and that's just going to take away all the resources.
We're not talking about kicking them out, Wes, just because your significant other's bedridden.
It's all about the juices. Is a juice worth the squeeze? In my opinion, is what you're bringing to the table better than what you're taking away from the group? Obviously, this is going to be all on some sort of audition style kind of thing. That's the main thing that we're talking about here, bringing someone else or bringing a group into your group. So when it comes down to trying out, you also got to figure a lot of people that are out there are going to be those used car salesman types. They're going to talk the big talk, but may not be able to perform. It might actually be that kind of person that's going to hurt your group by undermining someone else, stealing, that kind of stuff. I mean, it happened all the time in colonial America. That's why certain places were founded. Georgia, I mean, it's just they were kicked out of all the other towns. It's just the way it was. I mean, you got to figure, if someone's out there by themselves, especially after a certain amount of time, there's probably a reason. So you need this process to make sure that they're good. I'm not talking about just disabilities or illnesses. I'm talking about just in general, are you that kind of person? And unfortunately, the bad people do survive. Like, they're not just going to die. Like, they're probably going to take advantage of people and become warlords themselves. So look at Africa. I mean, warlords reign everywhere. So that's kind of what we're kind of looking for.
Well, Wes, I think you bring up a decent point. You know, Wes says if Bubba and Sissy join, and Sissy's meds run out now into 20-hour, 3 weeks into it, and Bubba now has to spend 20 hours a day taking care of Sissy. What do you do at that point? If Bubba's spending 20 hours a day taking care of Sissy, and he's been part of the group, and he's in there, or if he's coming and he's showing that he's putting forth the energy, I would like to think that a well balanced person like the people that I'd like to think are in this group are going to be able to see the need for assistance there, and they're going to be able to be that crutch that Bubba needs to lean on right there. We're not going to just kick you to the curb type of thing. Now, at the same time, you guys, this is all obviously hypothetical because it really just depends on how heavy the SHTF situation is, how deep into it you are. Is this a week after the bombs go off, a month after the bombs go off, 6 months after the bombs go off, 2 years after the bombs go off? Because those timelines are going to be, dictate a different level of assimilation for your group. Because, 2 years into an SHTF situation, you're going to have a pretty good process built. You're going to have a pretty good way of governing your group at that point. But 2 weeks after the bombs go off or whatever it is, you're not going to have that level of balance and control because you're still going to be trying to figure it out. So it's obviously kind of hard to just conjecture that, no, we're not going to bring this person in, no, we're not going to bring that person in because of the dynamic aspect of this, situation that we are, storybooking right here. Now, with that said, I think it's really important to have as Will was speaking about earlier, having a path to being able to assimilate people into your group. When 2 weeks after the bombs go off, are you just going to open the gate and let them come into the keep, or are you going to have a protected area that you can set up a pod for that group and have them on the outskirts of your homestead, and you can bring them resources, help them, give them tasks and chores, have them go chop fire, whatever it is you need done. And then once after, a week, 2, 3 week period, they've been able to prove themselves, you then open the doors to the keep and bring them into the castle right there. I think it's really important that you do maintain a level of separation during that assimilation process right there, so that you don't allow marauders and hoarders, used car salesman type, to walk the walk and then come in and pillage and plunder your group. So you're going to have to be on a swivel the whole time,
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. Whether if it's 2 weeks in, you're just trying to keep everybody alive, and as it goes on, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, all the way up, until it's kind of a safe thing. You're learning along the way, and you're assimilating the whole time. You're assimilating because we I'll just speak for myself. Is I don't want a bunch of hassles. I hate drama, So what I would do is I would just try to keep everybody alive and working towards the same goal. And as we go on through the tough times, everything should just fall into place, because eventually you're going to have everybody that's in the group on the same page. They're all going to want the same things. And if they don't, then that's when the group will assimilate and say, hey, I think you need to go different place.
And she had made a comment that she felt like that. Let me see if I can get this back up here. That the mental, let's see. Sorry. That's why I think mental integrity is far more important than physical. Now, I don't quite agree with that. I think that for the entire group as a whole, you need to have both. You can't just focus on one area. You really need both, because you're going to be working to keep that group alive. And yeah, the mental integrity is important, but so is the physical. And so, you've got to focus on everyone doing their job and then being able to do their job, whether it's sitting there and washing the beans or, the vegetables, or watching the kids, or out there patrolling on security lines, whatever it is, you're expecting every single person to do their job. And that's going to take physical and mental, no matter how you look at it.
And to piggyback on that, my group, when the shit hits the fan, I will require 110% all day, every day from everybody in the group. No questions asked. If you're not giving everything all times, you're not part of the group, because that's what survival is going to take in these tough times right there. So you really are going to have the mindset that if you are going to attempt to assimilate into a group, you are going to have to be willing to give everything. You're going to have to be willing to be that communistic lifestyle for a while, that socialistic, lifestyle for a while, because that's what it's going to take to keep these small groups alive and to keep them surviving. Because democracy is not going to be able to keep those groups together. I
disagree on that one. I actually do, severely, actually. And I also say, if you're going to work nonstop continuously, anyone who's worked nonstop horrifically continuously, you're going to have injuries. You have to have slack to recover from them, and you got to have to deal with that.
I understand that, but you're not going to be able to be sitting around and moping. You're not going to be able to be emotionally weak or spiritually weak or physically weak for long. Obviously, you're going to have your downtime. You're going to have to work shifts, and that's part of the assimilation right there. Is 8 hours here, and then I'm going to be able to rely on the other people of my group to pick up the slack when I need to go and shut down and reboot the computer right there. But if you're not all willing to swing the hammer at all times when it's needed, because when the fire breaks out and you've only had an hour of sleep and you need to form that bucket line, everybody needs to be able to be there at a moment's notice with no gripes, this, that, or whatever. So you all are going to be able to have to be willing to jump to action at any moment for any reason, because it's going to be so unstable in your environment that you're going to have to be prepared for random incursions of whatever it be. So with that, I'm not saying you're going to have to go work 18 hours a day and then sleep. You're going to obviously have to manage your time appropriately so that you don't injure yourself, so that you can, sustain yourself appropriately right there. It's all obviously within balance, but you are going to have to give full energy of heart at all times.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that.
In an SHTF situation, it is absolutely guaranteed. You're going to have horrific, hideous injuries, and people have to have severe downtime to deal with them. I mean, if someone breaks vertebra in their back, you can yell at them as much as you want. They ain't getting up. I mean, that's just a fact.
Right.
I understand that, but at the same time, those heavy duty injuries, we're obviously going to be able to manage it to degrees, but when modern technology and modern science and modern medicine go out the window and you're back to 1800 style medicine, you're going to have 1800s style results from that medicine. You're going to have a lot more infections. You're going to have a lot more death, disease, and stuff like that. So obviously, I'm not going to, crack the whip on someone that has a broken back. We're going to do what we can, obviously, there. I'm not saying that everyone, too bad, your leg's broken, keep working. We're going to, but within reason, you're going to, the able-bodied people are going to have to be able-bodied at all times.
That doesn't mean they have to work their duties off and create hate and discontent. That's the only way I know how to put it. But at the same time, be at the mental state where, say, the house catches on fire, they are willing to jump up and do their share to help put the fire out, so to speak.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Lou said in total SHTF, lots of physical work will be involved, just doing basic tasks to survive. And yes, that's true. And yeah, you've got to be physically ready, but you have to be mentally ready. But yeah, you have to be willing. There has to be all of it. It's a big thing. It's not just one little thing. You have to look at the big picture of it. And the big picture is everyone working together to take care of everything that needs to be done. It has to be a group effort. It can't be.
And diplomacy is obviously going to be very important. You're going to have to obviously maintain order. So obviously, when there's an imbalance within that order, you'll have to correct that and rebalance it. But yeah, you're all going to have a lot more mental capacity than we currently have.
Wes S. says the slow folks will weed themselves out fairly quickly, evolution and all that.
That's survival of the fittest right there, baby.
You got to bring something to the table. There's just,
Yeah.
this is a lot of this is hypothetical, what if, but I try to mirror or at least learn from the lessons of history about small communities and how everybody kind of banded together. And because you got to figure, before cars were invented, like most of the people never travel within, outside of 50 miles of their home. Like it just wasn't possible. So the chances of finding all different jobs or whatever are going to be within that certain, perimeter of your location, your area. That's just the way things are. And you got to figure resources are a lot different now than they were then. So you're not going to get that, creek full of fish or whatever that, they may have had. So you might have to travel. So having somebody that may be kind of weak on one thing, but that can physically do things might benefit you. Like, that's where all this stuff kind of comes into, like, how do I put it? Like, it all depends on the scenario here of what we're looking at. So if depending on if there's like a long distance, obviously the more physically fit, the better. But like we were saying before, there's obviously going to be jobs for people to stay back. The elderly, the Native Americans didn't kill their elderly. The elderly sat there and taught. That's just how those things work. Like, learn from history. So
Yeah, exactly.
I still think that no matter what, it's assimilation is learning and progressing. And I think it's still like I think like Reed said, I think it was Reed that said this, but most people that are going to be coming in and trying to get into your group are going to be probably smaller groups. They probably want to come in to be safe, from being overrun by thugs or whatever is going to be out there, So we wouldn't really have anything to do. Those people are probably already trying to assimilate their own growth. So it would probably be pretty easy to figure out what they are. So like Dan said, you could also take them and you could hate to say the word, but you could quarantine them in a separate part until you could work through them and make sure that they would work with what you have. That would be an assimilation of assimilating them into your group.
Josh Connor said, I'm not complaining at all. Groups have to look out for the group, but if you don't have one, and in my current situation, it just sucks. He was, I believe he was the one that said his wife was on dialysis.
Yeah, he was the one, Cheryl.
Yeah, and that's true. Here's the thing. If you look at people that talk about forming groups, I have actually tried to get into a couple of groups, and because they did not know me, they didn't know who I was, they were not even willing to know about me. They weren't willing to find out anything about me. My situation, I'm an older woman, I have disabled adult son. That was their reason. And honestly, yeah, if you look at people now and the way they look at it right now, they want the elitist, which is something that I think Southern Ohio Prepper had said earlier. People that are forming groups now, they're looking for the elitists. They're looking for the perfect ones. But in reality, you're not going to have everybody that's perfectly, they can't do everything. They're not physically fit. You're going to have issues. And that's the reality of it. So it's how you deal with that. Like Will said, how you going to assimilate that? How you going to work through that? And I think that's where the reality of things is. So,
well, like Anthony brought up earlier, history is a really good teacher on this. Looking at the way a bunch of the old colonies of America worked and functioned is a really good teacher about some of these things, especially also studying how multi-generational families functioned and stuff like that. Also gives you a good idea of how to help and get whole families in areas if they have older people, young people, and so on. I mean, history is a really good teacher of these things.
yeah.
Well, I think you brought up a really good point right there, Reed, because I personally am working on. I'm living in a multi-generational house at and since I've been back here in Atlanta, I've been able to connect with my family again, and my family obviously is my core mutual assistance group right there. They're going to be the ones that we're going to be leaning on for the initial shock and awe right there. I do have a question for you, Reed, because obviously you and I have differing opinions. And out of curiosity, what form of government do you feel is going to be most appropriate for a group of anywhere from 20 to 70 people?
Yeah, I've been thinking on that quite a bit. And so actually, my model on that is actually, because I'm actually aiming for around 80 to 100 people is what I'm after. But my model is basically the idea of a mini representative government system. And where you have the people that have these multi-groups, because we're actually talking multiple groups getting together that have already pre-formed and planned. And
so where different pods coming together. Yeah.
Right. And so I don't take this word the wrong way, because people are going to think the wrong way, but clans, different clans where the clan rules, their values, and stuff like that are specific to their group. And then, but the overarching government is very Americanized based, and you have representatives that go there, and that's where, the overarching government is decided. But local issues are local to that group of people. So the idea is to sort of pull. One of the things facing that America's been amazing at is you can have people from very diverse religious beliefs. We have Mormons, we have Presbyterians, I mean, all sorts of different groups, Lutherans, Catholics, and we haven't all killed each other. One of the few countries in the world that has managed to do that. It occurs to me, though, as I've talked with a lot of other prepper groups, you find Mormons, you find Catholics, you find all these other groups. And so there's a lot of very specificness to people, like Baptists is like that, or you can be like me, mostly non-denominational style Christian. But so some of them may want certain things for their group and their community that are important to them, and it's best for them to govern that thing for themselves locally. But then the overarching government is a representative republic style system.
Now, with that, just out of curiosity's sake, say you have your, 5 or 6 pods up and running. You've got, you're 6 months into it. You've got 70 or 80 people in your group, and you have a new pod of 20 people that show up. Does that new pod that you assimilate into the group instantly get the same level of representation that the rest of the pods that have been in the group for longer, that have been in the hierarchy for longer? Is there going to be the same level of representation there, or are they going to have fewer representative seats on that government until they prove themselves? How do you see that going?
I see that working actually sort of like what I call as a naturalization process. One is they come in and sort of it's a vetting to make certain, are they going to fit? Can they understand this? Do they understand how things work and so on? And so there's a time period of that. We haven't figured out how long that time period is. I mean, honestly, I don't think we're going to know until it happens. There's been debate so many directions on that. But then once they are, we're going to do something like the Great Compromise that America had. You have one section that's proportional representation to population, and another one that's representation equal between all. And because honestly, the way they hashed it out in the past for the America, it's about the only thing that makes the best sense. There's good sides either which way to do it, and I don't see I'm going to be any smarter than the founding fathers. So there's my comment on that one.
Well, to be honest with you, the founding fathers took a lot of their uniting things that you're talking about from the Native Americans, from the Iroquois Confederation. So a lot of the stuff that's in the Constitution was taken directly from the Iroquois Confederation. That's why, you know, I'm with you here on like the Confederation style government, where you all kind of seat at the same table, but you're not in the same house. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like, you want to make sure that you're all looking out for your family, your town. Say we're talking about like 5 towns in the same general area. Obviously, situations are going to be different per, you know, location that you're in, and you want to make sure you have the right footing at the table here. But you can't have one that rules all, because if there's one that rules all, then everyone's going to immediately try to take that one away. Like, you can't.
That's exactly the point. So the idea is that to prevent absolute power from corrupting, or power from causing corruption, is the idea that you have to realize you have to give it up already. So things are, you know, you're giving up power and all that. No one has absolute control. And so we have to work together to ensure our survival, sort of join and or die sort of thing.
So what you're saying is, so you got, say you just had 4 different pods, and each one is independent of each other. And if you wanted to make a change, say for the whole group, all of you together, one person from each one of those pods would meet into like a tribal meeting thing, and they would make the decision between, say, those 4 people, and then they would go back out and they'd say, okay, this is what we came up with. Is that what you're saying?
Sort of like that.
Now, to not to be too rough or too brash, because I obviously very much love the ideas that the founding fathers installed into this country, and I love the documents that they wrote. But let's not forget that when they wrote those documents, the power was only granted to white land-owning males, and it wasn't until like the 1950s and through the suffrage movement and through the civil rights movement that blacks and women finally got a voice. It took this country well over 100 years after its foundation to get its act together and actually be a true democratic republic. So while I like to think that the founding fathers had great ideas right there, they started off with poisonous fruit. So there, you know, you have to keep that in mind right there. It was only white landowning males that got to make the decision in this country.
All right, we have out in the chat, Preparax, he says, if you do not have all the rules, mission statements, constitution, and bylaws for a large group, it will crumble. All this should be hashed out prior to a group activation.
Yeah, he's pretty right on that.
Yeah, he says, otherwise, it goes on, otherwise, you do, I can't remember. Anyway, he said, I can't find all.
It makes perfect sense. Exactly.
Yeah, the chat
made it makes
kind of fast. So
Preparax brings up a very good point right there.
He goes
because without the 10 Commandments etched in stone type of thing, you are going to have dissension among the ranks right there. You are going to have a supernal law, a supernal rule that governs all, because with the diversity that is going to be in these groups, there is obviously going to be dissension among the ranks, because everybody's not going to believe the same way. We're not going to have the same religious beliefs. We're not going to have the same emotional beliefs. We're not going to have the same beliefs of what hard work is and stuff. So you are going to have hard rules in place that everybody has to adhere to.
See, I agree with that, because if you do it like you say, Reed, it's like he says, how are you going to handle the division? I mean, all those pods eventually are going to start saying, hey, it's not working the way we have it. How are you going to handle the division?
It's like how we handle it a lot of today. I mean, you're going to have to, people have to have faith in the system that it'll work, and that if things don't go direction their way, sometimes they'll get it on another time. It's the whole idea of people believing they are enfranchised. If they don't think they're enfranchised, you have a coup. I mean, just like what you just popped up, that's what happened. Things are just going to come apart. And so it also brings the point of, like, a lot of times the vote is done by simple majority now, 50% or more. And honestly, for a lot of ideas, actually, in my mind, and what we've talked about in my group, we said is, so if a thing doesn't require a lot of resources, get people to try a prototype of it. So you don't need a simple majority. Say, hey, that's a good idea. Let's put some resources at your idea and see how it works. And it helps keep the enfranchisement of people thinking they are part of the system and the system is working. And it all comes down to credit and faith. If people don't have the credit and faith and believe that what you set up is working, it's all going to come apart, no matter what system you've got. Even if you try to be the most iron-fisted dictator, people can still rise up and kill you. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Raven Tactical brings up a good point. You are absolutely going to have diplomats within your group. You are going to have people that can talk down you're going to have the lawyers type of thing. You're going to have people that can debate with objective reasoning and not subjective reasoning. That is absolutely going to be critical for your group, is to maintain objectivity.
Yep, that's why I put it up there so everybody can see it. I love that feature about this.
Yeah, and see, that's what I was going to point out too. He went on to say, unfortunately, the minority have been taught in general to rely on government and blame others for failures. There was something I was going to bring up. Here's my issue. I am currently building up a group that we are a part of. And as I said earlier, I'm an older woman with a disabled son. Now, my older son, Chris, has asthma. He can't get into the military because his asthma is just bad enough he can't get in. We fully understand that. But we are not being left out of the group that we're currently working on because of those reasons. We're actually being accepted into our group because of what we have to offer. Now, the other groups I tried to get into were the technical tech groups. It was all about what kind of guns you had and what kind of gear you had. You have to look at what kind of groups you're looking for. I do not agree that there are not groups available that do not accept women. I don't believe that. I do not agree that there are groups out there that do not accept people that have medical issues. There are groups that accept that. You just have to keep looking, and you have to keep talking, and you have to keep building, and you have to sell yourself. You have to show what you're worth. Kind of like what we were saying earlier, is you got to show what you have to offer. So I don't believe that every group is out there is turning away women and sick people. I just don't believe that for a minute. No. So
unfortunately, that's how it is. But that's why I don't think that the pot thing would work 100%, Reed, because with you creating your group, you're going to need people to be able to do like agricultures and hunting and raising animals and food, and that has to be for the whole group,
Oh, it is.
All those people just fending for themselves, you're going to have people fighting with each other trying to get what the other ones have. You're not it's not all for one. I guess not the right word, but everybody should be working for the same goal.
Right.
Well, actually, if you look back in history of the country, there was a thing like if you wanted to vote, you actually had to be registered and sign up with the fire marshal. And the fire marshal was the guy who organized the bucket brigades. Very different than what he used to today. Also, you had to be willing to serve on juries, be willing to participate in posses to go hunt down, bad men and stuff like that. So the idea of bringing back the social contract, saying if you want to be part of this and benefit from things, you have to have it commit to shared responsibilities that everyone does, sort of thing. And I think that's a really good lesson that we've all forgotten. Too many of us have forgotten over time.
Yeah. And Corsair Trainer brought up they can turn people away now because they can. And that's exactly right. What's really going to happen when SHTF does happen? Now, what then? It's going to be a different story. I don't care how.
I can guarantee that I'm going to need people that, I'm not going to need a bunch of, obviously I'm going to want door kickers, but I'm going to need a lot more than door kickers in my group to be able to survive. So we're going to have, a very diverse group that can function appropriately with each other. You're going to have all the different, traits, I guess, represented. So with that, you're going to be a lot less likely to turn people away if you need assistance. So it's going to be, important to be able to recognize, strengths over weaknesses, because everyone's going to have weaknesses. There's not a perfect person for the apocalypse right there. Everyone's going to have need to lean on somebody at some point for additional strength and guidance right there. So to cast people away just because they might have a disability is obviously not going to be, what you're going to want to do, but you're going to want to be able to be able to diplomatically find out what the strengths of those people are, so that you can capitalize on those with full fury.
And the two other really good points on that is like when you look at when we talk about we're like a major societal reset, we're back in the 1800s, right? You're talking 70% of your labor pool is devoted to agriculture. That's a huge pile of people just making food, we got to realize. So that's something to think about in terms of job assignments right there. The other thing, though, is, sorry, my thought train got derailed when I was watching one of the fuzzballs do something silly. I'll pass now.
The way I look at it is, and you're right, you're going to need a bunch of people for agriculture, but you're going to need people for agriculture, things like going out and hunting the meat, people for raising animals for the food, and people that can go out and forage. You're going to need people that not only can go out and look for medicine, but know how to make medicine out of what you have at hand. You're going to need people that are good with their hands for things like mechanic work, so that they can build, or people like engineers that can engineer something to make it work for your whole group, things like that. Or even you're going to need some people that are good at self-defense and at security. So
and then at the same time, you're also going to need like scavengers. You're going to need people and find stuff. I personally wouldn't mind having a couple of like hardcore homeless people in my group when it hits the fan, because they're going to be able to know how to go and get stuff that we don't know how to go and get, type of thing. So you're going to have people that can kind of do some hard things at times, because you're obviously not going to want to be a Genghis Khan style imposing force, but you are going to need to be able to go out and scavenge resources.
Well, Corsair Trainer said behind every shooter is 6 to 10 people in support. That's absolutely correct.
Every front line. I believe in Afghanistan the ratio is like, for every door kicker gunfighter they have, there's 11 support people behind him to make sure that he can go and kick those doors and support it, type of thing. So yeah, you're going to have a lot of people behind your security force, so to speak, to be able to maintain your security force. So absolutely, you're going to have, and I'm going to definitely want to rely on people that understand and that the gardening aspect, the agricultural aspect, and to cast somebody away because they may or may not be disabled could be, a big folly to you, because for all you know, that guy could have been a farmer for the last 50 years and knows everything about growing plants in any type of soil in any conditions. So it's all going to be about, a vetting during your assimilation process. You're going to have interviews. You're going to have to find out what people did before the balloon went up, so that you can place them appropriately or guide them to be able to learn the traits that they need, the skills that they have. So you're going to have literature. You're going to have people that can teach that literature. You're going to have people that can retain that literature, type of thing right there.
So as you can see, just that little short list that we have been bringing up, it's going to take a lot of people. So if
Yeah.
people will come knocking on your door saying, "Hey, we'd like to join your group," it's going to probably be small groups of family members or something that didn't think that they would need a group to begin with, So
Yeah.
you're going to have to bring them in. You're going to have to maybe set them off to the side, like you would a 6-pack of beer or something, and just kind of feel them out to see where you need to put them and stuff,
It's really complicated. Is like when you think about it, is if a lot of people locate you and are able to get access to you easily, it's going to complicate that. And like my group of people, we're still debating a lot of how's the best way to set people up in an area to watch them and see if we're ready for them and stuff like that. You're going to have to use a lot of terrain to help isolate your area, to make things impassable, make things hard to reach and stuff like that, provide good natural support for securing you, basically. And also, like, you may have a couple dedicated people for security, but also everyone, it goes to the basic training of the social contract that I was mentioning, is like we were talking about, everyone needs to know how to do, run a rifle, run a handgun. Everyone needs to know, like, when something happened, the general alarm sounded, what stations you man, what your area is, what you're supposed to be watching for, and stuff like that. So that the whole group as a whole sort of rises up with a milita to sort of attack and defend the areas, protect itself. Because that's the thing, is like when we look at the labor to raise food, it's so high. You can't have this massive security force until you really grow and get much bigger to actually support it, because there's so many people behind supporting all of that. Well, they ran.
Old man brings up a really good point. Don't forget that there will be spies. Absolutely. You are going to have to recognize that you are going to have people that come around.
Tailors, yeah.
You're going to have people that are going to want to be taking that what you have, even if they're pretending to be part of your group at some point. So you're going to have to, your core group is, you're going to have security within security, I guess.
Raven said you might need people with very unusual moral codes for dealing with security.
With a very unusual moral code.
What did I say? I think he meant unusual moral code for dealing with security. I think I know what he's hinting at there. Without saying,
you're going to have security force that can make hard decisions.
Exactly. Yes.
In snap decision, in snap moments like that.
Well, you do want to be careful of avoiding the mob rule and the air of suspicion, because if all it takes is an air of suspicion to get people, convicted and tossed out and exiled, it becomes a political weapon that people can use against their enemies. You do need a robust, open justice system. Otherwise, it brings horrible, hideous corruption.
I agree, Lou.
Yeah, I do too. I was just getting to that one.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we got to worry about, remember, I mean, this is something that's just so taken for granted these days. Calories are everything. It's going to be hard to stash away calories to, even now, to stash away enough calories for a security force to start immediately. Everyone's going to have to know how to do it, but you're also going to have a secondary job. Just like when I was in the Marine Corps, every Marine's a rifleman. Same principle here. You're all going to have to know how to do some sort of security, but water, I mean, being able to procure water, being able to, clean it or make it drinkable, being able to get firewood, especially if it's, in that colder time or for just general cooking, and getting food. Because, I mean, these calories just don't fall out of the sky. Like, it's going to be very, very difficult to feed.
They might,
purely,
if the birds start dropping, it'll fall out of the sky.
I was going to say manna. If manna falls from the sky.
But it's just one of those things you don't want to be eating, or you have to figure the calories it's going to take to serve somebody to just do security. Like, it just won't happen. I mean, in reality, like,
well,
we gotta
the calories needed to farm, to run a garden, to run livestock, to plow fields. That's going to take as much, if not more, energy than your security forces are going to take patrolling. So you're going to have to.
Those beasts of burden eat a lot. People today just don't realize how much a horse, a donkey, an oxen will consume to be able to help you do things.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well,
Okay.
you guys, we have run it to the end, but I think we have just touched the iceberg of this one. We're probably going to have to continue it next week because we're just now getting to the tip of the iceberg here.
Yeah, I agree.
It's definitely a very, very intricate subject. It's not something you can just, hit and deflect off of.
Yeah, deflect off of. So I think that we should continue it next week, my friends.
Before we jump off, though, I guess what are some of the takeaways that everybody's gathered so far from the conversation? Anthony, what are some of your takeaways so far? Reed, what are some of your takeaways?
The main thing I'm trying to think about right now is just making sure we got a good set of rule and law from the get, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page and just undermining does not happen.
I'm thinking about all the pieces that we don't have formalized yet. There's a lot of things that are still to be determined in my list.
Yeah.
I need to work on those.
Exactly. That's how I was feeling. I mean, we assimilated by starting really small, and now we're starting to bloom out like this. Now we're going to stay right here in a hold pattern, and the rest of us come back and try to fill in the rest of the void next week. How's that sound?
Works for me.
Cheryl, it's your turn.
There's a lot of different people you need for a group, and you have to look at what you need for your group, and you need to work out how you're going to deal with different scenarios. You need to just talk with your group and really work out what your group feels like needs to be done to help your group survive. There's a lot.
How about the side chat? What would they like to see us go farther into next week?
I saw something here. Let me go back up.
Corsair says it best. Simple rules to do and pull your freaking weight.
That sounds like Steve.
I think my biggest takeaway is diplomacy. Realistically, you're going to have to be the ultimate diplomat if you want to make a group survive. You're going to have to be the ultimate diplomat. You're going to have to be able to make hard decisions. You're going to have to make those decisions and stick to them. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Yep.
I have one last point for everyone to think about. If you look at the rulers of the past, some of the great people that have done amazing jobs, like Winston Churchill, and a bunch of Theodore Roosevelt and stuff like them, those people had a ton of vices and flaws too. And I think it's a perception of today where people think that great people are flawless and are perfect in every way. And you need to realize that great things don't also always mean that someone's perfect. You can have be a lot of vices and flaws in a person, but that's the person you need for the job at times.
I think that we have a lot to talk about.
Amen.
Yet.
Amen.
I think
Yep.
that we just opened up a can of worms.
Yeah.
I don't mind watching those worms squirm around a little
Yeah,
bit.
well, that's the way you get the answers out there.
It's an
That's how
important
I look at
discussion.
it. And I see what you're saying, Kay. I'll have you up here next week, okay? She said she had some things she wanted to add, so
And it's not just great people. All people have flaws.
Yeah,
All
nobody's
people.
perfect.
Nobody's perfect.
We're all humans, baby. You know, we're all struggling. Life sucks, then you die, right?
life sucks in the dark. Yeah.
Exactly. And I don't see anything else. Oh, Raven, yes, you do have flaws. Don't even go there.
At least we got one perfect guy in the group. We're all safe.
All right, yeah, we'll try to come back with some more stuff for you guys to help us with next week's side chat. I want to thank everybody out there in the side chat for being so gracious as to help us figure everything out here tonight. But we are far from done, so we will see you guys next week. Thanks for coming by.
Catch y'all later.
Thanks, everybody. Been a good one.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
They'll be gone here in a second.